ever feel like your parents were there, but somehow you still grew up feeling unseen, unheard, or like you had to handle everything alone? In this week's episode, we're unpacking emotional neglect, what it really is, how it shapes your adult relationships, and 5 steps to finally heal and reparent yourself. If you've ever wondered why it's so hard to ask for help, open up emotionally, or stop being the strong one, this episode's for you. So stay tuned. Hey, welcome back to the podcast. Here we are together. I've been waiting a long time to do this episode. It comes up so much, in my, we have a Substack group, the One Love Collective. If you'd like to join, I'll talk about that later. But we end up talking about this topic a lot in there because it's so hard to identify, especially for those of us like me. My parents were married. We had food. We didn't have a lot of money, but we had food on the table. The lights were on. We sometimes went on vacations. Like there was a lot there, but there was a lot that wasn't there. And neglect, it's such a hard, sometimes we hear that and we really just think of like deep abuse. And it doesn't have to be that to feel, to realize again that you were unseen and not heard in your childhood, and that has translated into issues with adult relationships. So let's get into it. It's hard to admit, I think, that the people who were supposed to love you best didn't really see you. I think that's at the core of this. Again, maybe your parents were around, meaning they got dinner on the table, or your parent, it could have been one person, but they got dinner on the table. They showed up for games or recitals. But when you cried, they told you to stop. When you were scared, they brushed it off. They might have really loved you in their way, but it's very possible it wasn't the kind of love that made you feel safe, made you feel known, or emotionally held. And if your parents were, physically present but emotionally absent, that leaves an imprint. It does. You learned early that your feelings didn't matter, so you stopped showing them. You got really good at doing instead of feeling. And now it's decades later, and you might find yourself in relationships where you're either can't let anyone in or you give too much, hoping somebody will finally notice you. So, and that's, I know for myself, what really sort of woke me up into this. And I remember being in therapy once and having a therapist tell me that I was emotionally neglected growing up. And I thought, what are you talking about? Gosh, Jewish parents, right? There was so much sort of talk about emotions in a lot of ways, but because my mother, God rest her beautiful soul, was a narcissist, as I've talked about before, had her own personality disorder and issues, and my poor dad, again, like immigrant parents, there's just a lot of stuff there about what they could and couldn't do, and so I never really put that together. And I did hear I love you a lot and things like that. So I thought, well, I wasn't emotionally neglected. I heard I love you all the time. That does not mean you felt seen, heard, or anything else. In some ways, always getting told I love you, but then not really feeling seen or heard, you start to wonder what love is. You start to wonder what that all means. So that's what, we're just going to dive into what emotional neglect really is, how it kind of quietly shapes your adult relationships. And of course, I always give you steps to heal. So we're going to talk about that. You can't change your childhood, obviously, but you can absolutely stop dragging that pain into your present. And it's really important. So what does emotional neglect really mean? Neglect is not always dramatic. Sometimes it's a calm, quiet absence, which is like invisible. So it's hard to name. And I've worked with a lot of clients who would describe their childhood, and I'd say, oh, so you were neglected by, really neglected by your parents. And they would argue that they weren't. And they'd say, no, my parents were always around. And I'm the one that needs to let them know that physical presence doesn't mean you weren't emotionally neglected. Even again, I love yous and things like that doesn't mean that. And especially for who you might have been as a kid and what you needed. So it really, emotional neglect happens when a parent or a caretaker consistently fails to notice or respond to or validate your emotional needs as a kid's emotional needs. It's not just about what happened, it's also about what didn't happen. So maybe your parents were distracted, overwhelmed, emotionally shut down themselves. Maybe they work constantly, or again, were dealing with their own trauma, like my parents were. It, I don't blame my parents, and I want to be really clear. This is not an episode about blaming your parents and being a victim. That is not my jam, as you know. My jam is that you can explain things, understand things, so you're not beating yourself up unwittingly and inappropriately. And again, you can take responsibility now that you have knowledge. It's like, okay, so now what do I do now that I really understand what the real issue is? How do I heal? And again, I always give you that. So your parents might have believed they were doing everything right because they provided food and clothes and education, but what you needed wasn't another meal. Maybe it was eye contact or to sit quietly with you and listen. It was, words like, I see you, I get it, that must be hard, any of that. Those are the things. And when you look at the research, which I did, because I do, but it calls this childhood emotional neglect, CEN, childhood emotional neglect, CEN. And again, it's not rare. I saw one study that showed that nearly 1 in 5 adults report experiencing CEN growing up. Okay, childhood emotional neglect growing up. And the effects are real. When a kid doesn't receive, again, consistent kind of emotional attunement, the brain's systems for safety, for trust and empathy, they actually develop differently, right? Without that co-regulation, kids learn to really suppress emotion instead of integrating it. I've talked about co-regulation a lot on the podcast. If you haven't heard me use those words before, the co-regulation is so important. So if you think of it as an infant, it's, when I was holding my infant children, and the energy that we were exchanging. So maybe they were really upset. And so I, as a parent, I might be, like, it's okay, shh, it's okay, I'm here, whatever. And we know telling a child to shush is not the way to go. But you're not a perfect parent. I certainly wasn't. But you're at least being calm with your kid. You're not like, oh my God, stop crying. I can't stand it another second. Not that parents can sometimes go there, but if you do that with a kid, they're co-regulating with that, right? With whatever your energy is that you're bringing to the table. And kids will learn to suppress emotion instead of kind of integrating what they're feeling. And they might learn it the other way. If you don't co-regulate, if they're screaming and you do nothing, don't even touch them, and they learn that crying doesn't get anything, that nobody comes, that's its own suppression of feeling, right? So what can happen either way is that you grow up appearing calm, but you feel disconnected, like there's something missing, even when everything looks fine on paper. And you might be someone who sabotages relationships when they're too good, or you might notice that everything's fine, quote unquote, but you're not feeling you feel like there's something off. So, because how it shows up in adult life is in this way. If you were emotionally neglected in whatever way that was, you probably don't remember moments of crisis. Instead, you only have sort of a long, dull, maybe ache of feeling of invisibility. And that's why emotional neglect can be hard to identify. There's no obvious trauma. It's like a lifetime of feeling like you had to handle everything yourself. And as an adult, that wiring shows up in usually really subtle ways, but powerful. So again, like, you might overfunction and be the reliable one, the caretaker, the fixer. Not that I relate to that, as you might imagine. You learn that being needed is the only safe way to stay connected, or right? So that's some of us who are kind of the overgivers and, working on that codependency and that kind of thing. Or maybe you underfeel, going numb when things get intense because your system was trained to, shut down emotion to stay safe. And by the way, I personally go to either end of that spectrum. So we kind of call that kind of going into hyperarousal or hypoarousal, right? I've talked about that before. So, and you likely choose emotionally unavailable partners because they feel comfortable. So, and you might struggle to ask for help because you're convinced you're a burden. It's a burden to ask for help. You might even feel guilty when someone loves you well because your nervous system doesn't know what to do with genuine sort of attunement with another human. Again, it's not about weakness, it's about wiring. I want to be really clear. Like, this is your wiring. There's a lot of, and I'll link to all the research as I always do. There's a lot of research that is consistently linking, when you look, childhood emotional neglect to things like depression, to low self-esteem, and relational avoidance. Because again, your brain learned early that it couldn't count on comfort. That's what it learned. So it built this independence as like an armor. But that armor, of course, really comes at a cost because you end up lonely in your relationships. You end up exhausting from performing. And on this other deeper level, you're sort of quietly desperate for someone to finally really see you. But no one is set up to succeed in that area because, again, you don't even know how to let that in when it comes. And you've likely broken up with people when they did do it, because it didn't feel right. Is this what love is? This can't be it. And let me just say a word about why your caregivers or parents couldn't give you what you needed. Most neglectful parents or caregivers, again, they weren't trying to harm you. My parents weren't trying to harm me. They were replaying what they were taught. That's the bottom line. Emotional neglect tends to repeat across generations. Again, not because of cruelty, but because of ignorance. Do you think my dad's parents in Poland, escaping the Nazis, were like worried about your how are you feeling today? There's so much trauma in our histories and in our parents' histories, and there's such a different, we're always evolving as humans, not as a race of people in the world, and what's important and what's not. And depending on where you're from, depending on when your parents are from, this is vastly different. So, your parents probably, or again, caregivers, I keep saying parent, but it could be any caregiver, probably grew up in a children should be seen and not heard kind of household, right? So maybe they were dealing with depression or addiction or financial stress or God knows what else. So maybe they thought, love only means providing and fixing, not listening and feeling, right? So it's they feel like they've done everything they're supposed to do. This is the stuff, but it still ends up with you feeling not seen, not heard, all those things. And again, I want to say understanding isn't the same as excusing. You can recognize that your parents' capacity was limited without letting that limitation define your worth. When you stop waiting for them to finally get it, you got to stop waiting for them to finally get it. You stop living in the waiting room of your own life. Okay? Oh, I just came up with that. I like it. Stop waiting in the waiting room of your own life. And because I have seen this countless times in my practice, clients who say something like, but they had it so much harder. And I said this myself, they had it so much harder than I did, as if that cancels out, your own pain, right? It's that comparative thing. It doesn't. It really doesn't. Empathy for your parents' struggle is healthy. I think that's great. But compassion for yourself is also essential. And again, I want you to remember that you might have a sibling or siblings who did fine in your household, and you're the one who's struggling. It doesn't mean you're broken or anything else. We all, none of us grew up in the same house. We all came in. I know it feels that way. We all grew up in the same house. No, you didn't. You all came in at different times. You all came in different, it's different genders, different issues, different, you had your own temperament. The family was at a different place financially or experientially, or maybe they'd moved, or there's a million factors that go into each child feeling seen, heard, listened to, whatever the words are, safe in a family. And so you can't compare yourself to a sibling who maybe did very well with this kind of feedback, shall we say, this kind of parenting. So it's really important not to compare, not to allow your siblings to compare. We're all a little different. I think of my oldest sister and I could not be more different. And there's a little over a decade between us, and the boys were in between. And we could not be more different in so many ways. I can't even. And of course you could look and go like, wow, your sister is so anxious and so whatever and so this, and you're not. I don't have those same issues. It's like, yeah, but again, we were in being the firstborn and being the lastborn are very different in a family. I had a lot of different issues than she did, granted, but you know what I mean? So it's really important not to compare and go, why are they this way and I'm this way? You got to get out of that. Uh, so let's talk about healing. Healing from emotional neglect, I want to be first and foremost, is not about confrontation. It's about reconstruction. You are not here to fix your parents. I've got to tell you that right now. You are not here to fix your parents. I hope that's not why you're listening. If you are listening and thinking, well, I've got to, reconcile this with them, you don't. You absolutely don't. My parents are dead. So if I came to this work now, how would I do? Are you telling me I could never find peace with this? Right? Of course I can. So, and I think it's actually more frustrating in a lot of ways when you try to fix your parents in all this. That's not your job. Your job is reconstruction of who you are and your relationship with them. You're here to rebuild the parts of yourself that never got a foundation. Okay. That's what we're talking about. And I have an entire episode on reparenting yourself, which again, I'll link to. And if you haven't listened to that yet, please do. But I'm doing it. I'm trying to, I always try to, so go listen there and you can learn how to reparent yourself. But I always try to give something different in each episode because everyone's a little different in how they come to things and what they need. So you might have found those steps that I have in the reparenting episode and been like, that's it, I got it. Or you might have been like, this doesn't quite fit for me. So I'm going to give you 5 steps right now to help you heal. Okay. And hopefully maybe these will speak to you, or again, maybe the other ones did and you have an alternative now. So number 1 would be to name what happened. You can't heal what you won't name. I'm going to say it again. You can't heal what you won't name. And emotional neglect, I think, really thrives in vagueness, the sense that something was wrong, but you can't quite define it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say should. I invite you to start putting language to your experience, And so one of the things I have my clients do sometimes is write down the things that were missing. Write them down. What was missing for you without apology? You don't have to, again, you're not going to hand this to your parents. You're not complaining. You're not some spoiled little brat. Let's let all that go. Let's let judgment go. And what would happen if you wrote down the things that were missing for you as a human, who you were in this family growing up? No one noticed when I was sad. Maybe it was that. I learned to take care of myself too soon. Affection felt conditional. You don't have to prove it. You don't need to write why. Just for you. Because when you label what happened, you move it from the emotional centers of your brain into the rational ones. We get out of amygdala and into prefrontal cortex. Language turns confusion into clarity. And clarity is the beginning of healing. I want to be so clear. So name it. Name your experience. Write it down. Do a little journaling. Set a timer for 15 minutes. That's all you need. I promise you don't need hours to do this. And then just Write it all down. Another helpful thing you could do with this part is to think about the things you're always looking for your partner to give you. That's probably what you didn't get as a kid. Or think about the constant arguments you have if your caregivers or parents are still living. What are the things that, oh, you walk away going, that's probably the same thing that was missing as a kid. So write it down. Let's label it. Step 2 is you gotta grieve the fantasy. What I find is that most people who are emotionally neglected cling to the hope that someday their parents will finally see them. But that hope is what keeps you trapped in the waiting room of your past. Because I like this waiting room analogy now. You were supposed to be nurtured. You were supposed to be soothed. You were supposed to be just delighted in. And that didn't happen. It did not happen. I don't know. I'm sorry. That's not who you got as a mom or a dad or whoever. Grieving that loss is not self-pity. It is radical acceptance. I did an episode on radical acceptance. Go back and listen. It is radical acceptance. When I finally stopped wishing for a mother I did not have, is when I finally got to a point of accepting and trying to love and build a relationship with the mother I do have, and of figuring out what it is that I needed from a mom or want from a mom, and finding that unconditional love, unconditional acceptance, unconditional positive regard in other people, right? Other relationships I had, and really making sure that I was filling those beautiful pieces up. And that it's so important. I just can't stress this part enough. It's you're resisting what is. You're fighting what is. And there has to come a time when we grieve it. When we say it's not, it's just not. And we stop trying to force something that's probably not going to happen. It's really, on some level, it's acknowledging that the love you needed wasn't possible from the people who raised you, and letting that truth make room for something new. That's what you're doing. That's how you create space for that. And the grief, I'm going to tell you right now, can come in waves. I know that, again, from myself and from my clients, that I felt like I had done a lot of work, and then I had kids, and I was mad all over again. I was angry all over again when I had children, because, of course, I was treating my own children so differently than I was treated, right? And then, you get through that. And then maybe they're now becoming verbal and teenagers or wanting things and thinking, again, another wave of grief, that because you're realizing over and over, it comes when they died. I had different grief. Like it's sometimes some waves. I don't know what to tell you. So, and you might feel sadness, anger, guilt, resentment, whatever, for even acknowledging it. You gotta let every one of those feelings come. They are signs that you're facing reality instead of denying it. And it just couldn't be more important. So important. I want you to have it. Allow yourself to have it. Allow yourself to let go of whatever dream that is. And I know too, like Mother's Day and Father's Day, there would be different things that would come up that would remind me, again, that other wave. And, or people, sometimes I'd read a post like, there's no one more important than your mother, call her today or something. And I was like, ugh, like just people's ideas and judgments about what what should and shouldn't be. Or people even saying things to me like that, like, well, it's your mother, you need to learn to get past it or whatever. Finding your own peace is really important, but you're going to have to grieve the old relationship first. Okay. Step 3 is what I already sort of mentioned, which is reparenting yourself. Once you accept that your parents just couldn't give you what you needed, it's time to give it to yourself, right? Reparenting isn't about, I don't know, some sort of self-help slogans or something, It's really, when I talk about reparenting, I know it can sound really, even to my own voice, sort of what I call airy-fairy, right? It's about daily compassionate action. You're the adult now. You get to meet your own emotional needs instead of waiting for someone else to. This is also going to help you not set up your partner to be your mommy or your daddy or to fill all those needs. That's not their job either. You want to create a really healthy relationship with yourself before, we get into other, accepting love and unconditional regard from other people. When you feel lonely or triggered, you want to talk to that younger version of yourself. That's the beauty. I see you. You matter. I've got you now. I love those. I love those. So, this means creating some sort of rituals of self-care that are really nurturing, not performative. Eating because you're hungry. There's one. Not eating to distract yourself. Not eating because you're bored, but eating because you're hungry. That falls in the category. Rest because you need to, not because you've earned it. You don't have to earn it. You could have napped and already feel like you have to go back to bed. Okay. Celebrating your wins, again, especially the small ones, because maybe no one did that for you before. Maybe it had to be something so huge to even get noticed in your family. Every act of gentle attention that you give to yourself is rewiring your nervous system towards safety and trust. So every time you do that, we in the Substack community, the One Love Collective, we call it Wednesday. I think I talked about this before. And on Wednesdays, we do wins. Now you can do this yourself. You don't have to join our community to do it. It would be so good if every Wednesday you thought Wednesday and you just wrote out, and I always say do 2 wins and from the week and one thing you'd like to work on. You can do this daily too. That's fine. I like the one thing you want to work on, not one thing you did poorly. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about one thing you'd like to work on for the week or for the day. And what it happens when you start doing this more and more, I promise in the beginning, it's going to be hard. You think, I don't have any wins. I don't know of a win I did yesterday because you're thinking too big. A win is that you got out of bed without hitting the snooze alarm. A win is that you took a shower. A win is that even if you ate crappy maybe you started your day really well and you ate a really healthy breakfast and then you didn't eat well the rest of the day. But the win was eating a healthy breakfast, at least getting that in. Like really breaking down that things don't have to be perfect to be a win. That anything you did during the day that you committed to yourself, that you followed through on, maybe you went to work when you really didn't want to, even if you had a crappy day at work. I've had some crappy workouts, I've worked out, but it's still a win that I went and worked out, even if it wasn't a good one, even if it felt like I got nothing done in that workout. Do you ever have those? It still counts. So this is a skill. So when you do it often, you get better and better at it. So I'm just letting you know, you're going to try this. You'll be like, Abby, I can't think of anything. People in my group, in the One Love Collective, do it all the time. They're like, I didn't have any wins this week. I'm like, yes, you did. Yes, you did. I have to remind them often that we're looking for the small things, not the big things. Obviously, there's some big things too that are wonderful, but you've got to kind of break it down better. Oh, I remembered to carry water around with me today. I'm usually thirsty during the day and I remembered to hydrate. I don't know. Again, anything that is in that category. This is not, oh, you're getting a ribbon, a trophy for just participating. That's not what I'm talking about. You're not supposed to think, I'm the best, I get a trophy for today. It's just about acknowledging that it's not all crap, because you're actually going too far the other way. So this is sort of helping you skew really towards the real, the normal, because you'll sit all day and think about all the things you screwed up, that you think you screwed up, right? So why is that okay? And it's not okay to actually acknowledge that you did some things well. So what you're doing, because our brains skew towards negativity, is you're just literally, you're not even skewing it towards positivity. You're creating some balance is what you're doing. Okay. Step 4 is to set clear boundaries. Can we get through an episode without mindfulness and boundaries? No, because they are the heartbeat of your life. So if your parents are still in your life, you may need to redefine what that relationship looks like. Emotional neglect It often teaches you to question your right to take up space. So boundaries can feel really selfish when you were trained to minimize your needs, but they're actually self-respect in action. That's what boundaries are. I've talked about my brave, BRAVE boundary method, being clear about your needs, uh, restating it maybe up to one time without defending or justifying, acting consistently on your word, verifying your intentions, right? Boundaries come from love, not punishment, and ending the interaction if it's being violated, right? So that's the brave method. So if your dad criticizes your parenting, you say, I appreciate your opinion, but I'm not open to advice on this. If you keep commenting on my parenting, I'm going to hang up the phone. I'm going to leave the house. I'm going to, whatever. And if your parent kept going, follow through on whatever response you said, that you stated. What I call that the teeth. So the goal isn't to make your dad or mom or whoever understand. It's to show your inner kid that you'll protect them now. It's to stand up for yourself. That's the goal. So you have to follow through. Remember, no threats, no like, don't do that again, or I'm going to leave, nothing like that. And as you know, my favorite is to say something like, you know what, I already asked you not to mention my parenting and you're mentioning it again. So I'm going to hang up the phone now and we'll try to have a conversation another time. And that's it. And then hang up. Don't wait for them to respond. Don't wait for a conversation. Oh, but I wasn't trying. Oh, you're so sensitive that you just hang up or leave the house or whatever. I like hey, and we'll try another time, because you're letting people know you're not punishing them. You're letting them know this is not a good time. Okay. That obviously this isn't working right now. And you're stopping the interaction. Really, 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 really important. And then the fifth step is you're really looking to build new attachment models, I guess is the best way I would say that. That's the final step in healing from emotional neglect. It's learning that love can be safe. And you do that by forming new relationships that model emotional attunement, so people who listen, people who validate you, people who stay present even when things get messy. And I'm going to tell you that at first it's going to feel weird. It's going to feel strange because your brain, remember, is wired for familiarity, and healthy love can usually feel boring. It can feel uncomfortable. It can feel like wrong somehow, and that's okay. That discomfort means your nervous system is learning something new. That discomfort means that you are finding a new balance, right? Think about, I always think about my tennis training when I was younger, and I remember having to change my swing and how uncomfortable it is. So if you've ever played a sport and you found that you were, swinging the bat wrong or the tennis racket wrong or the golf club or whatever, or that there was a better way to do it, it's so uncomfortable when you're first relearning something. And I can remember I was really good at tennis. I was state champion. Like, I knew what I was doing, and yet I could be better. I think of like Tiger Woods changing his golf swing when he was like the top of his game, right? Because there's ways to be better. And so again, when you use that towards your relationships in some ways, you're like, well, these work, I don't know. But they don't really work. There's a level where they could be better. And so getting uncomfortable, rewiring your nervous system is so, so important to be able to get there. And I know, again, it can feel weird, but that's okay. And I want you to think too about letting people in slowly. Don't rush. And I think that happens way too much, that someone starts drawing boundaries and then, maybe a parent, let's say, respects that boundary for a little bit. And you're like, oh, great. Now we're going to come over every Sunday. And now we're going to do this. Let's go on that family vacation. And I know. And then the parent falls right back into old behavior. It's like you went too fast. It's okay to go, I know you're looking for this love. I know it feels so good when they validate, when they do something, but you need to let this new way of being, these new habits, they take time to really integrate fully. And I don't want you rushing in too soon and getting disappointed and then pulling back, when if you just went in slower and weren't setting your expectations so high, right? Remember, high standards, low expectations, not high expectations, low standards, the other way. So when you have those high standards, but these low expectations and you go slow, you'll notice you will not be so disappointed or hurt when they're not perfect, when they don't do it well. And you're just going to be right there redirecting. And then slowly over time, they really start to get it, hopefully. It's like practicing being vulnerable. You're not used to it. So you need the practice, they need the practice. Try to be so mindful, to notice when your instinct is to pull away, and instead take that breath and stay. I want to run away. What if I just took a breath and stay? We want to run away because we're afraid of not holding our boundaries. We're afraid that, because again, no one can trample your boundaries. I want to keep saying this. I know it, because that's not what no one can trample them. They are your responsibility to hold. It's not the other person's. It's not your parents. So you're the one who needs to say what you will and won't accept. And then what you're going to do if they don't fall, if the person doesn't respect that boundary, what you're going to do, not what they're going to do, what you're going to do. And you need to stick to it. Okay? Because healing does not happen through insight alone. I can't say this enough. Healing doesn't happen through insight alone. It happens through new, consistent experiences of connection. I have so many clients who just want to go over and over and over with the insight, understanding, figuring out, well, at some point, that's fine. And then it needs to stop, and it needs to be about action. It needs to be about action. All this needs to be about action. If you are going to therapy and just talking about stuff and then never actually do anything different, I don't want to say it's a waste of your time. Obviously it's not, but I don't know that it's really helping your life, because actions are what has to finally change. Ultimately, I think at some point even it's hurting your life because you feel like you're getting help, but it's really not help because you're not changing. At some point you should be changing. That's what therapy is. If I'm working with someone long enough and they don't change, I fire them with love, with heart, just letting them know, like, it sounds like right now is not a good time for you, which is okay. Like, we've done a lot of talking, we've done a lot of, chatting about this, but you're not making any changes. And I don't want to enable you, and I don't want to waste your time or your money or your resources. I want you to go out there. Maybe I'm the wrong therapist for you. Find someone new who's going to help you through this. I don't know. That's all okay to do. And I would really say to you, if you're in therapy right now, which I hope, a lot of you are, I want you to think about, like, what are my goals in therapy and have I reached them? I set new goals all the time. I'm thinking of a gentleman I'm working with who came to me to kind of like save his marriage. He's really looking to save his marriage. And we did the work and we worked together for like a year on that. And he ultimately decided after a lot of stuff to end the marriage. And I said to him, okay, like, do you want to be done with therapy? And he did such a good job through it. And anyway, it was all really well. So, but I said, to me, the goals now are that you get in a new relationship ultimately that does not mimic this old one, that you figure out what you do want now. Like, now you really know the red flags for you in a relationship and what you need. So do you want to do that work now? Like, moving forward when you're dating and doing it? And he was like, absolutely. I was like, great. But in other words, we have new goals. It wasn't just like, oh, let's just keep chatting now. Like, we had that one goal. We didn't reach it exactly. Although my goal always, if someone comes to me to save their marriage, I always say the same thing. I'm like, my goal is not to save your marriage or not save your marriage. My goal is that you find peace and fulfillment and have no regrets about it. Whatever that means. So that could mean staying in the relationship, but having maybe radical acceptance and loving detachment or whatever. That could mean leaving the relationship, but maybe again, you have to co-parent and having a healthy, strong bond, whatever, that you have those things. So I can't have it in my head that this marriage has to, or this relationship has to stay together at all costs. That can't be my goal for me, for the work I like to do. For some people it is, that's fine. But I'm always very clear up front. I just never want anyone to stay or to leave and regret it. Feel like they didn't do enough or try hard enough or that they tried too hard or that they shouldn't have given the person another chance or whatever. Regret sucks. And that's what I don't want. So insight alone isn't going to get you there. I would like everyone listening to audit their current situation, even your work with me. Like, let's say you don't do any therapy and you're just using the podcast. Great. Is your life changing? I get emails from all over the world all the time. People like, I've changed my life. I've changed my life. I love it. It fills my day. Please send me that email, by the way. I love those. But if you're listening and all you do is listen and never take the action steps or never download anything or never practice, use the mindfulness starter kit or something, I would really ask you, what are you doing? If you just keep reading about attachment, let's say, and reading everything you can about attachment, but you are in the same relationships over and over and not changing anything, then that's a problem. You've got to take the action. At some point, you've got to do the harder work and it's usually a daily practice of some kind. The meditation, the mindfulness, the just coming back to calming your nervous system over and over, all those kinds of things. So, and I want to say too, I laid these out as 5 steps because that's what I do, but they're not linear. They're not. It's like I kind of laid them out in a linear way, but you can see how you would jump around. You'll circle back to them again and again. That's kind of what happens, or a step here, a step there, because you're going to deepen your self-awareness each time. But the good news is that every pass you take strengthens that foundation, the one you should have had all along, the one that is your birthright as far as I'm concerned. And if you're dealing with parents who are still neglectful today, like that's still happening, because a lot of times your parents never change. They stay emotionally unavailable. They're stuck in their own story. Again, it's tempting to keep trying to get, one more ounce of recognition, one more I'm proud of you. But you can't force emotional presence from someone who never learned how to give it. So I want you to really think about loving detachment. Again, I did an entire episode on it and I will link to it, but loving detachment is not detachment, right? And it's not just love, it's both. It's saying like, I care about you, but I'm not going to abandon myself to have a relationship with you. You can love people from a distance, even while you're limiting contact. You can wish them well without volunteering more pain, And you probably will feel guilty about pulling back. That's the child part of you still hoping for a different ending, but peace doesn't come from being understood by them. It comes from understanding yourself. You need to get clear on this. You really do. If they couldn't show up for you when you were small and helpless, they're unlikely to show up now that you're capable and independent. I know. I don't say these things obviously to hurt you. I say them so that you can kind of wake up in your life. You can stop chasing their growth and start nurturing your own. That's what this is about. So is that my wrap up? You can't rewrite your childhood, right? But you can absolutely rewire your brain. Every time you validate your feelings instead of dismissing them, you are repairing what was broken. Every time you ask for help and let it in, you're teaching yourself that connection is safe. Every time. You really can create the emotional home you always needed inside yourself and with the people you choose now. You don't have to keep living in the shadow of your parents' absence. You really don't. Being unseen in the past doesn't mean you have to stay invisible forever. You were never too much. I want to say that to you. You were never not enough. You're just waiting for someone to finally see you, and that someone can be you. It is certainly me in this moment. Okay? It is certainly me in this moment. All right. So for this week's episode, I created something, I think I call it the Emotional Neglect Recovery Map, which really just maps out a lot of this. So you can, that's the free download for today. You can get that under the video. If you're watching on YouTube, you can get that on the website when you go to this episode. And then there's a therapy to go bundle with every episode. If this is your first time listening to me, I have that's what it is. It's like therapy to go. It's a bundle that you can buy for $10 that goes with this episode. I'm about to list everything that's in it. Or if you are a member of my Substack community, which is only $8 a month, where you get live Q&As with me and drops of the podcast without ads and early drops and all kinds of other community online that's very supportive, all the things. You get this included, all this stuff included. And there's 4 episodes a month, so usually on average. And so you would, right? That would be $40 if you bought a therapy to go bundle with every one, and it's $8 a month just to join the Substack community. So it's up to you, obviously. But if you want to go deeper, and these are great too, if you are in therapy and this is a real issue for you, you could download the therapy to go bundle and you could do it with your therapist. You could really talk about it with your therapist. So the bundle for this week is our journaling prompts, and again, they're very specific to this issue. I created a boundaries and action worksheet for this. I created a list of scripts, like what to say to a neglectful parent. I find the scripts, you guys seem to really like the scripts, so I try to do a lot of those. I did a worksheet. I'm calling it Letters I'll Never Send. It's sort of a thing to write a letter and that you're never going to send the letter, but it's sort of an outline to help you do that. There's an emotional rewiring practice sheet. And there's a neglect recovery checklist. I mean, there's a lot. I know there's a lot in this week. So you can feel free to download that. Again, you get that included if you're in the Substack, One Love Collective. But if not, I really do hope you put today's lesson into action at the very least and get the free emotional neglect recovery map. It's like a kind of like a 5-step guide to help you reparent yourself, set the boundaries, find emotional safety is basically what it is. So that is it for this week. You were never too much. You were always a bit enough. I'm sorry if this is an issue for you. It sucks. It really does. And it doesn't mean that you can't change it now, for good. And so that's what we're looking to rewire for good. So I hope today helps. Thank you for spending time with me as always. I love you if no one told you today. Thank you for being with me. This is the greatest gift of my life, really, besides my kids. But it's up there. You're in top 3. Having the true privilege of doing this podcast all these years. So have an amazing week, and I will talk to you real soon.